Right. Good morning, new math teachers. Like I said in some of my other videos, I'm Terri Bucci from Ohio State Math Literacy Initiative, the Ohio State University. First of all, I want to thank you for being here. And what we want to do with the Math Literacy Initiative at Ohio State is really just serve the caregivers that are at home now with little ones and big ones, and help you just kind of navigate through some of the homework that your students might be bringing home. So we have different sessions that will be coming up today. Next Monday we'll have some other sessions too. So if you have ideas on things that you want to learn more about, please let us know, and we'll make sure that we attend to those. So, but just to start out, today at 10 o'clock we're going to be talking about what's called making tens. Now, a lot of the things that we'll be doing, I'm going to try to help you understand the technology or the terminology. So making tens is exactly what it sounds like, being able to make chunks of tens. And it's a really important skill in kindergarten and first grade. First grade, they start to get into 20s as well. So if you have a kindergartner, a first grader, or even some preschoolers, you can do a lot of these activities with them. So let's first talk about why it's important to make tens. So why are tens important? So our number system is based on tens. What that means is that all of our numbers combined together, they include chunks of tens. So when we have 10 ones, that means that's a chunk of 10. So 10 ones is one chunk of 10. What would 10 tens be? 10 tens. So 10 tens is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So 10 tens is 100, or 10 chunks of tens. Now, we're going to be able to need to know how to do this when we start adding and subtracting, and you may be doing this with some of your second grade or third grade students at home. But being able to really recognize those chunks of 10 is really important for learning mathematics. So let's talk a little bit about some of the tools that you can use. So I'm going to put over here, our number system is based on 10. Super important. Number systems based on 10. So, like I said in the Instagram videos before, I know a lot of you don't have materials that we typically use in a classroom for making tens. A lot of times in the classroom setting, we use these cubes. They're kind of base 10 cubes that you have here. But I know that most of you aren't going to have that at home unless you happen to be a retired teacher, know a teacher, or because retired teachers have everything in their basement. So, but let's make some, I made some suggestions on how you can make other chunks of 10. So, if you have playing cards, that's a tool that we're going to use. So, or that you can use. This is a tool you can use for both making tens and then another game that we're going to talk about in the place value section, which will be at 11 o'clock. So when you deal with kindergartners and first graders, if you're going to use cards, notice that I covered up the spade in this case, because these are spade cards. I covered up the one that's right next to the number. Kindergartners and first graders are very literal, so if you want to use cards to help them to count and to know what these numbers are, you might want to cover up these little the little spades or hearts or diamonds or whatever on your cards, just so they don't get confused. Because that way, even if you're just talking about counting, which comes before making tens, that way they can see the number that's on the card, and they can also count the items that are on the card. So cards are a really good tool. If you happen to have cards, it's good for all sorts of things in mathematics. Also, I have, remember I talked about having, these are little pine cones that I got from the back of our house. You can use whatever you want from wherever you are. Let's say you don't have a whole lot of stuff at home. You have paper. If you have paper or even junk paper or junk mail, you can make counters out of these. So I made some white counters and some red counters just out of used paper. So if you have paper like from junk mail or something, you can just rip off a chunk and squishle it up. So here's a counter. Here's my white counter. Squishle. That's it. Insta counter. So white paper, squishle. Now you do want about a couple different colors. So I also have red. So all I did was take some white paper and I just colored it red. You don't have to be super picky about how you color it. But again, so now this is my red color. Squishle. Red. Squishle. So we don't want you to look at any of these activities and think, well, I don't have those materials at home, so I don't know how to do it. So that's why we're talking about how you can use different materials as counters. Again, we can use, I have Play-Doh. You can use any kind of modeling clay, but you can have the students make counters out of Play-Doh and use that. They'll like being able to roll up the balls for their math lesson. Anything you can do to make math seem relevant to them. So if you're using one of their toys or something that they use around the house, it's really valuable for them once they get going. So making tens, the biggest piece that we use when we make tens is some kind of tool that represents 10. So if you have eggs in the house or egg cartons, this is one of my favorite tools for making tens. This comes from, I think, the organic eggs, but you can use any egg carton. Now, you kind of do want to cut off the last two in front of the kids so that they know that a set of eggs is not 10, just so that they don't get confused. So I just cut off the last two egg carton holes there. I'm going to put it up here so you can see what happens. All right, now we need a number. So we're going to have to start with a number. Again, you can use dice, you can use number cards, you can just put numbers from 0 to 10 on pieces of paper, fold them up, and they just pick one out of a basket. Anything. No special way to get your number. I'm going to use my number cards that I covered up. And so we have 7. Now there are different things you want. So I'm working with the caregiver. So I'm trying to help you folks work with your students. So one of the things that we know is that the person who's talking is the one who's learning. So if you hear yourself talking and telling a lot with your student, you might want to back off on that a little bit and ask some questions. We're going to talk about what kind of questions are important at 2 o'clock this afternoon, because questioning and the way that we question really helps us to better understand our students at home and how they're thinking about math. So if you do use cards and they pull it out, you ask them, so what number did you get? And let them tell you. Here's a really important thing. If you wait just a minute or you wait just a little bit and they don't tell you and you jump in and say, well, it's 7, then they'll learn that. They'll learn that you're going to jump in and tell them. And so the stimulation for them to, or the urgency for them to count is not going to be there. So be patient. Sometimes silence is a really good thing with a math teacher. Just letting your student think about something. If you remember to when you were learning things for the very first time, you didn't just learn it like that. We needed time to think, to digest, to go through different ways of thinking. So we have our 7. Your student could count them, each of these items on the page or on the card, or they could recognize the number depending on the level of your student. So we have 7. So I'm going to use my Play-Doh balls. Now, this is all what your student does, not what you do, and let them place them however they want. Now, eventually, so I'm going to place them like this, and it might freak some of you out, but so they might just say, oh, they want to look at a pattern. That's okay. Let them play. Let them play with that. But then the idea, so making 10. So the next question would be, okay, I would probably first ask them to reassure me. And sometimes we, as the caregivers or as the math teachers, we kind of act a little bit like, I don't understand that, because that helps students to ask questions and better understand things as well. So once they put these in here, say, well, can you tell me why, how do we know that this is 7? Hopefully what they'll do is they'll count each one. This is called one-to-one counting. This is part of the counting principles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they count 7. The next question for you to ask them would be, okay, well, I have my turquoise Play-Doh balls in here. How long would it, or how many more do I need to fill up my 10 tray? And let's keep calling it 10 tray. Keep calling 10s, saying 10s as much as you can, because that's the main idea. So how many more do we need? Now your student could look in there, and this is what makes it a little bit difficult. So they have to kind of jump around to tell you what they need. So we need 1, 2, 3. So ask them how many they think you need. See if they count those empty spaces, and then ask them to get the counters that they think that will work. So it's kind of like a little game. So I think I'm going to need 3. Let them say that, and then you say, okay, let's give it a try. And don't say, yeah, you're right. We know all our students are smart and bright, and we want to encourage them as much as we can, but we also want them to play a little bit. So let's say, okay, let's see if you're right, if it's 3. So we have 1, 2, 3. And then your question is, okay, is our 10, do we have a group of 10? Yes, we have a group of 10. So eventually when they do things like this, what you'd like them to learn is that, and this isn't, you don't have to force this right at the beginning, but what we'd like them to learn is that it's easier to figure out what the partner is to 7 using this 10 frame, this egg carton 10 frame, if they're organized in a way. Now, some people like to organize them by 2, because this is a really cool thing too. You could say 2, 4, 6, and we have 7. Now, if you start getting into even and odd numbers, remember way back when we were in school, we knew that a number was odd if it didn't have its partner. So we can also talk about issues like that. Even if even and odd might not be something that you were working on, if it comes up with your student, go ahead and let it come up. So this is one way that people stack, and this is another. So you already have a 5 and a 2 is 7. That's why when you teach kindergarten, first grade, a lot of times we start counting by 1s, then we count by 5s, then we count by 10s. And that's all building up for when they start doing subtraction with regrouping. That means borrowing, carrying, all the adding, subtracting. We call it regrouping now. But it's really helpful for them. So this is just a very simple thing that you can do with your student. But I promise you, if your students know how to make 10s, they'll really, really do well when they start getting into working with manipulation of number. So again, this is called a 10 frame. So we have a 10 frame. Now there's an easy way to draw a 10 frame if you want to draw a 10 frame on paper. So you make a rectangle and make like a middle column right here. So we have this middle column. This is to get 5s, because 5s are a little bit harder to disperse. So middle column, then put these on the other, and then we're going to split it. So right there, this is called a 10 frame. So if your student's homework has something including and talking about 10 frames, that's what this is. There are other ways you can make 10 frames. So let's say you have a tile floor. If you have a tile floor, you can just use maybe put some masking tape or some yarn or something around the tile floor, and you can use the tile floor as a 10 frame. It's really cool. Probably most of you don't have 10 people at home, but if you do, you can do this activity, and that is to make a people 10 frame. So you can make a 10 frame and then roll the die or get your number, your initial number, and then put that many people in there. Now let's say you don't have 10 people in the house, but you have some stuffed animals, or you have any of these other counters that we're talking about. If you have stuffed animals, you can put them on the tile. So let's put our stuffed animal. They each get a little cubby. Make it realistic for your students. They each get a little cubby. So if it's on the tile, if they each get their own little cubby, so then they put their stuffed animals around to do exactly what we just did with the egg carton. You can also just draw it on a piece of paper and play around. So I'm going to roll a die. I got a 3. I'm going to use my stones. So I got stones out of my backyard, and I just colored some green. So you can kind of see it on my finger still. So we have green. These are green stones. All right, so we have our 3. You can also ask the question, do you know if this is even or odd? Well, we know now because we have a 2 and we have this extra fellow over there, or this extra green rock. So now again, the question is, how can you make 10 when we have 3 green rocks or 3 green stones? So have them guess first. Now, you don't want them to totally guess. They can look at it and you can say, okay, make a guess. And they might say 8 or something. And then you say, okay, let's check our guess by counting the squares. 1, and you don't do this. They count the squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 7. Oh, we have 2 7s. We did same numbers. But that's super cool because we had first, put my stones up here, we first had 7 in our egg carton, and then we put 3 in. Now we start with 3 and we put 7 in. So these are called partners, 10 partners. So we figured out today twice that if you start with 7 and you put on 3, that gives us our 10. Now you notice I'm not using traditional algorithmic symbols. We're just talking about chunks of 10 right now. Eventually this will turn into something that looks like this. But for right now, we just want to talk about the numbers. We just want your student to feel comfortable with the numbers. That's it. So we have these partners then. So when you do these tasks over and over, I would strongly suggest you do making 10s with your kindergarten or first grade student every day. It will help them incredibly. So there are other games that you can play. So let me just finish up because I don't want to spend a lot of your time in the morning. I know you have other things going on around the house, but let me just show you another game that you can play with your student on making 10s. So I've taken, again, cards. If you have playing cards, if you don't have playing cards, you can make all of these things just on regular paper. And if you don't have regular paper at home or lined paper, use some of your junk mail. Cut up some of those envelopes and use them to make tools for mathematics. So I know some of you may have played the memory game. So to play it with making 10s, I've taken 2 suits. So I have the clubs and the diamonds. And what I've done is I've matched up a red and a black. Red and a black. All of these make 10s. Red and a black, 6 and 4. There's another 6 and 4. And we use these then on that memory game. I don't know if any of you have played that. I used to play it all the time. I loved it. So basically, you just turn them all over. Mix them up first. Don't cheat because you're going to be playing with your student. Mix them all up. Put them all on your table. And so on. And then just like the memory game, we're going to turn one over. So let's say I turned over a 2. I'm going to just set it right there. I turned over a 2. I have to find now the number that makes a 10 with 2. But it has to be the other color. So 2 is black here. It has to be what makes 10 with 2? So what's 2's partner? 2's 10 partner is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 9, 10. 10. So 8, that means 8 of them would be the 10 partner. So let's say the 8 was here. They turn this over, they get the 8, then they get to keep these 2 cards. So that goes in their pile. they get to keep the 2 piles, or their cards. And you play this over and over and over again. Your teachers will love you for it. Your students will do well in math for it. So making tens, huge idea. And I hope that you have some ways that you know how to make tens now. I hope this was helpful. Please comment on our message board, either on Instagram or on Facebook. And if you try some of these things, take some pictures of your work and give us some comments about how it worked with you, or if there were issues with how it worked with you. That's the kind of stuff that we can help you with. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being here for our first Instagram session. We have another one that starts at 11, and that one's about place value. We'll be talking about why place value is so important. It's really for actually most grades, but 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in particular. First gets into place value as well. One last tidbit, you can also start getting into teen numbers. So instead of finding out what is missing out of our 10 frame, if your student's ready, and it takes a little while to be ready, but if your student is ready, you could have your 3 and then roll the die again or pick a card again. Because what might happen is you might get an 8. So what happens if you get an 8? Well, these stones don't like to stick up there. So if you get an 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and look at this, 8. This is a cool thing to happen, because now we know, because your students have been working with this for so long, that you have a 10, but we have this little one here. We have a 1 there. Now, 10 and 1, so we have 10 and 1. That gets us into place value. That's what we're going to talk about next. So we have 1 10, and we have 1 1, which for all of us is 11. So once your student gets really comfortable with them making tens, start to move them on into teen numbers. Thanks for being here. I hope you learned something. Let us know how it goes at home. Have a great day.